exciting one for me. I think this is just starting now. Perfect. Hi, my name is Brian Kellerman, and you are watching and participating in our webinar on quality assurance and quality control. We are going to be discussing quality management systems and ISO 9001. I do want to say, as we get started, I am really big into quality management systems, as you can imagine, as part of my career. For most of the time, when people are looking and searching for information on quality management systems, they are looking for ISO 9001. In this discussion, we're going to make a bit of a distinction. We're going to focus on 9001 for those people who are very concerned or interested in that topic. But we want to raise our discussion to talk about quality management systems as a thing into themselves. So we will be talking about both. When we're talking about a quality management system, we're of course talking about managing quality within an operations, whether it's for products or services. And if we are going to make it an ISO 9001 quality management system, that means we've purchased an ISO 9001 manual and we're setting up that quality management system according to the requirements of that code specifically. But a quality management system can be designed in any way that we feel is appropriate for our operation. Before we jump into the nuts and bolts of this presentation, I do want to say that I am the Chief Quality and Food Safety Officer at Kellerman Consulting. And for anyone that needs help or assistance with this, our information is here. Additionally, we have a handout, which is a brochure, which you can access. And then most importantly, for those of you who have been to one of our webinars previously, my favorite part of doing webinars is that I get to interact with you right now. So as we are talking about quality assurance and quality control, quality management systems, ISO 9001, if it brings something to your mind, and that is what I'm trying to do, I want to get you thinking about your program, whether you have one or you are yet to put one in place. But if you have some questions, please enter them into the chat to the right of my screen. I believe it's on your right side as well. If you want to ask a question, I will happily stop what I'm doing, stop what we're discussing in that moment and answer that question at an appropriate moment. And we can address what you're interested in, like during this presentation. I love to get to do that. It's my favorite piece. So with that said, let's jump into this and let's see what exactly we're talking about here. I'm assuming that many of the people listening to this, and I do see some friendly names popped up in the roster list here, either have some kind of quality management system of some kind or are thinking about doing it. Whether you are certified to a high-level system or whether it's just something that you're trying to manage in an operation. We want to talk about first defining what is quality control, what is quality assurance, and how does that fit within a larger management system? Within that context of what are these things, what does a QC person do? What does a QA person do? And let me stop there by saying, early in my career, when I heard quality assurance and quality control, it made me feel very nervous because I didn't understand the difference. And I'm not sure how many people understand the difference between quality control and quality assurance. So we're going to define that, as well as what would a person in those roles do. And then we're going to think through, like, would I actually benefit from a quality control department? If you have an operation that includes a quality control department, hopefully some of the things we discuss stir your thoughts or your interest in maybe rethinking how you're doing that. We're going to turn our attention to quality assurance as well. So we're going to define a QC department. We're going to define a QA department. And then we're going to talk about how do they work together if you wanted to have both. And I have worked with clients that have both a QA and a QC department separately. That is a possibility. And if we were going to do that, so how would they work together? But if we're going to do that, what might be the problems with trying to manage both departments simultaneously? As we jump in to that, I do want to quickly say, and we're going to talk about this a little more with further into the presentation, I want you folks to think about quality assurance as making the business run correctly, and quality control being about making sure that our product and service is functionally done correctly. And those two things obviously go together. However, if we have quality control, we are focused on operational controls in real time. When we're thinking about quality assurance, at least for me, in the way that we're going to talk about it, we're thinking about the organization itself. And do we have the proper functions and proper programs in place to make sure that the business is actually operating correctly? And those distinctions, I think we're going to be able to really sort them out and expand on it so that it is a meaningful distinction as we keep going. So let's start at the start. First of all, we do not have to have a quality department of any kind. We do not have to have quality control. We do not have to have quality assurance. And if any of you are shaking your head, what is this guy talking about? I promise you that in my line of work, I would prefer it if everyone had some kind of quality system in place, and I would prefer a quality department. And I don't really care whether we call it quality control or quality assurance. And there is no functional requirement. So now with that said, one caveat here in the first bullet point is that in some industries, there is an expectation of a quality manager who is independent of operations. And that is really, really important because we want to start with what is a quality system and who is responsible for it if it's not a requirement. Now, that quality manager is someone who's responsible for some kind of quality checks. And they are, again, independent of operations. And so we'll dive into that. But that second bullet point here, it is common for us with our clients to see people with no quality department. Now, that doesn't mean that there are no quality functions within an organization. It just means that we don't have any individual in the organization that takes a designation of being dedicated to quality functions. And that's okay. You're allowed to do that. If we have a business of one person, that's impossible. The minimum requirement for a quality component of a business is 2 individuals in that business. So we have to have 2 people. And the reason we have to have 2 people in order to have a quality function in a company is that our bare minimum requirement, and this is something that we have covered extensively in our internal audit webinars and training series, the minimum requirement for quality is that the person who performs a function cannot also review and check off that it was done correctly. We need to have an independent second party within an operation to check off on it, or we don't have a full quality assessment. There's too much of a conflict of interest for a person to do something and then check on it. So in a business, we don't have a defined requirement for quality departments. When we think about specific industries that require a quality manager, and here I noted 2, pharmaceuticals and dietary supplements are 2 industries where it is an expectation from the industry, from regulators, and in audits, if we're going to have a certification scheme, that there's a quality manager separate of operations. The reason why that requirement exists, at least is my understanding of it, is to prevent a conflict of interest, that when an operations manager is responsible for quality, there is too much of a chance that that person will make unacceptable compromises in analysis, in approving results that may not be appropriate, and the operational need to ship product is so great that that person should not have control over approval that things were done correctly, that there should be a second person who does not report to operations, that reports directly to senior management. So those things are industry requirements, but nowhere in rule books in general does it say that businesses have to have quality departments. So as I think through like a very small business in which the owner more or less is the operator as well, and maybe has hired a couple people, the owner is allowed to be the person who sets the tone of the business, tells people what to do, writes down standard operating procedures if there are any, and maybe puts some forms together to have folks write down results as they're working on it. If we have a situation like that and there is no one who has been designated to maintain that part of the business, then that means everybody is responsible for those functions as we go. And the policies and procedures, they may come from outside the business. It may be written by operations or top management, that's fine. Checks are going to be performed by either operations, top management, somebody in the business. It could be the person answering the phones. I don't know. Someone would get up and go do checks. That person has the responsibility to do some quality checks, some quality functions, but that may not be their job. It may just be something they do in addition to other things, in which case they're not dedicated. We find, and some of you listening may say, oh, I work at a business where we wear many hats. We hear that all the time. That is a very common thing. I worked at a business where that was somewhat common to state to other people. Well, generally, if you're telling people we wear many hats here, that's a sign that we probably don't have a dedicated quality department or dedicated quality people. We just have folks who have the responsibility to check on what's going on in the business periodically, and those people are performing quality functions and quality checks, even if they are not dedicated to do it. So with all that said, since we don't have to do this unless it is an industry standard, and that is a very small number of industries that require it, in ISO 9001, which we're going to talk about extensively in the second half of this presentation, we're going to see that even at the 9001 level, they do not require a quality department or, in fact, any quality roles be designated. And I promise you, it is true, and we'll take a look at it. But if we're going to set up quality control in an operation, and if you folks have quality controls in operation, let's think through what we're really talking about here. We'll see if it lines up with your the way you have things set up, with your fundamentals, and if that's in what way would that be the most appropriate designation if we're going to have a dedicated quality function. So if we're going to do quality controls in operation, and almost every business should have some quality controls, quality control or QC, those are the folks that are frontline checkers and the people who are checking to make sure that the planned functions are occurring as intended. And I guess here I kind of want to say quickly, when we're talking about quality, and this is something that I am wrestling with and have been for a number of years, like what really is quality? In our current times, and in America now at least, and I think in most of the world, quality has become something that we kind of associate with expensive and luxury items are generally considered to be quality. But we don't want to think of things as, we don't need to associate quality with monetary value or scarcity or the materials that are used in it. Here, when we talk about quality, we are talking about the planned actions, scheduled planned actions, and confirmation after the fact that those planned actions occurred as intended, and documented corrections fixing anything that we found to be out of specification for what we're trying to do. That's quality. We plan ahead, we do it, we check afterwards. Boom, quality. Plan, do, check, act. For those of you with the ISO language, that's it. That's quality. What we use, how we do it, we can use cheaper materials, but if we do a great job of what we expected to do, if we followed our company's processes, then we should get a good outcome. Yasmin has typed in that in the facility that they work at, I am the FSQA manager and oversee sanitation, maintenance, receiving teams in addition to quality, which I can definitely see as a conflict of interest. And it may very well be. But Yasmin, if you are doing an honest, decent job and the records are appropriate and you have a clear line of organizational structure in which that's the case, we can still make that work. As you're pointing out that, hey, your job is to do quality, to check to make sure that those people have done the right job. But if you're also the person who's in charge of them and you're instructing them on how to do their job and then checking on it, the chance of conflict of interest is exactly what we're concerned with here. It's like, it would be best if someone else was sort of telling those people what to do and that you were freed up to independently come around and organize the quality checks on that. However, Yasmin, I want to clearly say, if you have the title of FSQA in a facility, it implies it, and if it's a food facility, then you have regulatory requirements. If the government has come in and looked at your facility and said thumbs up, if you are certified to a standard and you've passed audits, then you're not doing anything incorrect. There's just a chance to reevaluate the organizational structure and think through, is there a better way? Thank you very much for adding that point here. To take it back to QC, we're talking about front of line folks. So we're talking about people who are doing line checks. That might be weight checks, calibration checks. If we have, when I think of QC, I'm thinking about a cart that is brought to the line in a manufacturing facility, and we may be doing on the line checks, not in a laboratory. I'm thinking of folks with clipboards that are going around and checking off that the tasks for a product or service have been achieved at various steps in operation. A good quality control department, if a company was going to focus on quality control, might have 10 or 15 steps in manufacturing something. And at each step, there is a hold to make sure that a quality control person comes in and checks off that they have inspected each part of that step or each step subsequently and checked off that it may move on to the next step, or they may check it right before the, if they want to do it pre-operational for each step to say, hey, we stopped it at this point and it is now ready to proceed. That would be a good QC check. And again, as I mentioned, we're talking about are we making this product correctly in real time? So when we're talking about making something correctly in real time, we are putting all of our focus on not necessarily how the company runs, but as long as we have people that are monitoring in real time, pulling things off that are incorrect, allowing it to either be remade or discarding it, we are protecting the quality of what we're doing. The departments, the places where this would be most aligned would be directly in operations, for service technicians, for those people who are doing services and not products. The maintenance department may see QC checks for repair and preventive maintenance. Yasmin mentioned shipping, receiving. Possibly a cleaning or cleanup team may have quality control checks associated with them. So now with that said, everything we're talking about here, an operator can stop what they're doing and perform QC checks. And I want to challenge folks to think about this. I might have great operators in my business, and I might have them as operators Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and have them take on dedicated QC check roles on Tuesday and Thursday and sort of rotate folks around. There is no reason why an operator cannot have partial dedication as a quality control operator, or we can't switch people in and out as long as they are trained properly on what they are checking for. And as long as those people know that when they are doing quality work, when they're doing dedicated quality checks, they can't stop and go on the line. That we should have a distinction between being on the line and being a reviewer for things on the line. That is really a dividing line between quality control and the other parts of operations. So a maintenance person can do quality checks, but if they are actually the ones repairing equipment, they should not be doing quality control checks on the repair itself. If I'm the person responsible for removing tools from a workspace after I'm done doing maintenance, then I probably shouldn't be the person checking off that those tools were removed after repair. There hopefully would be a secondary set of eyes on that. So as we switch over into quality assurance in operations, we're moving away from dedicated monitoring of operations as it is occurring in real time. And now we're moving towards, how does my business function? Do I have a properly functioning set of departments that work together in concert to achieve that quality? Now, the quality checks that we just referred to are the end result of planning, and they are the real-time inspections that we're doing. For quality assurance, these are the folks who should be setting all of that up and who should be performing the training functions, the scheduling reviews, liaisoning with with top management for management review, performing internal audits, the review of the business itself to see that we are in fact designed to achieve our quality outcomes. Now, it is here that I want to talk about, and again, we're going to go back into 9001 in a moment and to make sure that we're talking about how does 9001 certification fit with this. But when we're thinking about a QA department, we start to get into some political issues here as to the authority and power within the organization. Quality control, because it is so closely aligned to operations, there can be some issues between QC and operations. There may be some conflict or concerns or disagreements in how things should function, but quality control generally is treated as a sort of, I don't want to say entry level in a business, but it is certainly a lower in the organizational chart. As we get quality assurance functions, because there is direct relationships between who the QA manager is and what a QA department might do, they have a lot of authority over how programs are written, who is given responsibility, where responsibilities are taken away from others, how we assess corrective actions. So when we introduce quality assurance departments, we start to see some elevated sense of conflict, possibly in the executive level. The operations manager and QA manager, oftentimes, for those of you who have been in these situations, may not agree, and there can be some serious undercutting of authority in those situations. So where we have quality assurance, because it is a larger consideration of how the business functions, we start to ratchet up some of the concerns that may exist in operation. The departments that we associate with quality assurance for us would be like human resources as it pertains to training, the executive level, so VPs, C-level folks, they have their obligations, responsibilities from a business standpoint to make sure the business runs correctly, and how quality assurance fits into that is generally like going to be close to being an equal. We see so often that the people who have been in the quality assurance role in businesses eventually end up at the VP level or maybe given a director title. Whereas with quality control, that's much more rare to see a quality control manager be elevated to the level of upper management. I'd love to see it. That's certainly, again, for me, anybody who's doing the quality function is a hero. So I would like to see them be given a place of authority in a business and given support and all those things. But it is at the QA designation that we start to see it generally up at that high level. QA may liaison with accounting when it comes to actually budgets and how those things are affected if we're doing internal audit functions of departments. Sales, who's allowed to purchase, where you're allowed to purchase from, approved suppliers, things like that. And development and R&D work. We often see an overlap of R&D and QA being the same person. All right, so as we kind of push through to ISO 9001, do we even need a QC department? Like, are we sure we need one? Well, let's quickly review. We definitely could use a QC department if we have the resources to do it, if we have the capital to dedicate people off the line to be doing checks, if we feel like we have real problems on the line getting things right, then that might indicate we should have a QC department. It's, again, not required. And I want to say here, like, this slide says QC department's not required. I promise you, we're going to go to the next slide for QA, also not required in operations. Where I already have a quality assurance department, a quality assurance technician working in a lab might, and most likely, I have to say, in my experience, where we have QA labs, there's a lot of times downtime in between when tests need to be run, and a QA tech can just put on a hairnet, smock, whatever, or can just go out if there's no PPE requirements and just jump right into the line and perform QC checks and then go back to the lab. And in that case, a QA tech is doing quality control checks. And that is a fairly standard arrangement. So I can have a quality assurance department or a quality department that just has, with free time, the ability to go do quality checks. And that would be fine. In our previous webinar, we talked about this critical quality metrics, and that would be where we have functional quality requirements that are built into our operation. We have to use the correct display unit for each device that we produce. And so I have to do a check and make sure that I have the right electrical unit there, or it's not going to work right. In a situation like that, where that's a critical quality metric, I may say, hey, I have critical quality checks. I want a dedicated department that oversees that process. And it might be worth having a QC manager and a QC department for that. Do we need a quality assurance department? Well, just like with our QC slide, we do not need a QA department, and I may already have a quality control department, and I may task that quality control department to write policies and procedures, to perform corrective action reviews, to do the internal audits, to present to senior or top management. Fine. If I already have a quality control department, I can ask them to do quality assurance functions. There is no rules to say that's not acceptable or that someone may come to my facility and be upset with me. Now, if any of you have an arrangement with a customer or a client, and that client or customer is telling you, I expect a quality manager to be there, and they define if you need a quality department, one way or the other, quality assurance or quality control, they may say QA/QC. If your customer is demanding it, that would be an example of where you have one because it's being forced. But again, that's to meet a customer's requirement, not because there's some kind of written codified expectation out there in the world. In terms of the other considerations for do I need a quality assurance department, the questions I ask here, do I have a quality management system in place? If I already have a functional quality assurance department in place, quality management system in place, excuse me, whether I'm going for ISO 9001, some other certification, or whether I just want to have a quality management system, if it's already there, I may not need to continue on with a quality assurance department. I could just have a QC team that takes an existing system and makes sure it's not screwed up. And if those people are trained up enough to slightly modify that system over time, great. Then maybe I don't need to enter into the power dynamic concerns that come in with a quality assurance department. If I don't yet have a quality management system in place for my company, whether it's for products or services, I may want to have a quality assurance manager, someone who's got that experience, because my expectations that they're going to come in and write the policies and procedures, that they're going to understand if I'm expecting to become ISO 9001, they better know how to purchase that manual. They better have some experience with the rules in there and have read them and understand what documents need to be attained and retained and implemented so that when I go through ISO 9001 audit, all of those things are already in place. So again, we've been talking about a general quality management system, which can be done however you need policies, procedures, forms, schedules, internal audits, however you want to put those together, you can make yourself a nice quality management system without some standard. The minute that we say, hey, we're being told ISO 9001 is going to be beneficial for our business, now we're getting that book. And that book tells us how to run a quality management system. And it has 7 sections. And those sections each have clauses in them that are requirements that build us out to a quality management system. We better have those things. If I don't already have one of those programs and I need one built, a quality assurance department might be a very effective way to hire somebody who expects that kind of role. It allows me to advertise for a quality assurance manager. And I should be able to attract people to a role that have already done this before. To go along with that, if I have highly trained people inside of my organization and I offer up to create a quality assurance department or maintain it, that may be a good incentive for highly trained people who know how to write these documents and set them up to take on that responsibility in the business. Before we mention key performance indicators, I just want to say that, I cannot stress enough, in a business that is looking to implement, whether it's just a quality management system of your own design or dedicated to ISO 9001, to take someone with no experience, to ask someone who doesn't have the technical training in place yet, or is maybe did it a long time ago, doesn't really remember, and to ask them to put these things in place is an incredibly tall order. Policies, procedures, record keeping, corrective action systems, the control of external providers, calibration, traceability, all of those things are not easy to put into place. And for someone who's never done it, there's just a tremendous amount of questions. I wouldn't want to B, I wouldn't have wanted to be put in that position early in my career. I certainly would be uncomfortable putting someone in that position if they've never done it before. Lastly, and to get back into this slide, are key performance indicators established in an organization? Well, if I have KPIs, so if I'm going to run a quality system and I'm going to put in place key performance indicators, so key aspects of my business that tell me if the business is running correctly or not, and I don't want to leave the focus on top management to review those things, that's where a quality assurance manager can be the person to confirm, to collect all the data for the KPI, present it in a trending chart, make sure that senior management or top management has it, that they've reviewed it, and that any follow-ups that are needed can be run through the quality department to make sure and assure that they are carried through all the way through every level of the organization. So to have a quality control department and to have KPIs, again, there's no rules to say we can't do that, but if I have high level and upper level key performance indicators that are at those C level or VP level, I may not want a quality control operator or a quality control manager to have access to some sensitive information in the business. And that would be something where you introduce higher level folks to run these things, to liaison between top management and the functions of the business. All right, so let's get into this ISO 9001. Let's talk specifically about it. We've already introduced, you've got the ISO 9001 code, that the standard has been purchased, and we are looking at a quality management system, and we are looking at, hey, we got to bridge the gap here and make sure we're covering all of the requirements of ISO 9001. For those of you on the food side, and I know I have several folks here that are on the food side, this would be somewhat equivalent to the GFSI schemes or a GMP audit. We're talking about, regardless, a certification scheme, we have a book and we have the rules that go with it. And so these principles do apply somewhat across the board. In any of the certification books, I want to reiterate, they do not prescribe a quality department at all. And this can be quite shocking for people to hear that, wait a minute, 9001 doesn't make you have a quality department of any kind. That is true. It does not require a quality manager. There is nothing in the code that specifically says you have to do that. What is required in the code, and it is in this case, and just as a reminder for folks that are thinking about 9001 or a statement of it, 9001 starts with Section 4, the context of the organization, and it goes to Section 10, improvements. The first three sections are sort of definitions of how the audit functions. And so we talk about sections 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are the guts of a 9001 program. In Section 5, which is the leadership section, the last clause, 5.3, requires an organizational structure. Now, the other clauses in the program that talk about the context of the organization, the business is responsible for identifying this is who we are, and within that definition you should be able to identify we have quality functions within our QMS. For this 9001 program, it's defined by these people. So you define who is responsible for quality checks, and when you define it, if it matches what's going on in that operation, you are in conformance with quality checks. Beyond that, in this section 5.3, in the leadership section, we have this, because we have an organizational responsibility, an organizational roles definition, we have to have an org chart. And when you put that org chart together, you are defining the nature of how quality is done. But the positions you choose, whether what departments are what, it's so unique to each business, and 9001 allows you to do it as you see fit. When we're doing the rest of the requirements for 9001, so when we're setting risks and opportunities in Section 6, if we're putting in a risk analysis system, if we are doing our communication responsibilities, which is training for competency and awareness, and then general communication of policies and procedures, whoever on the org chart is responsible for those things can be defined however they want and see fit. all the tasks that are required in those sections. 8 is the operational section, which of course how we actually functionally make a product, and the quality checks that go with it. If we do quality control checks, if we're doing internal audits, those things have to be defined by somebody, but it does not say what that person's position has to be, nor does it define exactly who has to report to that person. So as you make an org chart and as you're thinking through the structure, whatever works best for your organization is ultimately acceptable within the program, provided it's documented correctly and provided folks are trained properly with whatever their roles are. So when we're thinking about, do I have a lab? Do I have QC carts? If I'm providing a service and not providing an actual product, do I have on-site people that are performing a function? Can I even have quality people go on site during a service call? That's usually where we see a dividing line. If we have a plumbing operation that's 9001, it's going to be very difficult for a quality control on the line check for someone performing plumbing work in an office building. We may have a quality control check function after the fact, or someone visits after the service has been provided. However, that can be a difficult arrangement. Usually when we're thinking about making products, when we're a manufacturing operation, QC checks as we produce are much more common and expected. But as we're thinking through like who's supposed to do these checks and how do we do them, that should define your quality system. And we can sort of put names, titles, departments in place based on what we find there. And again, in 9001, there's no problem. So with that said, since we can do whatever we want within Raisin, as long as we're meeting all of those causes in the sections of the ISO 9001 book, what should we do? What's the recommendation here? Well, I'm going to tell you that I really, really believe that if I'm going to try for ISO 9001, a quality assurance department is ultimately a great idea, and that department should have control over document creation. What that means, however, is that if I'm going to go into ISO 9001 and say, I should really have a QA department, and that QA department should be writing all the documents, we have to start with having a person who's capable of creating those documents. And if we don't have that, if we are stuck with a QA manager who is actually not capable of writing those things, whether they have been transparent about that fact or not, we're going to see tremendous difficulty in following through on an ISO 9001 program. ISO 9001, any of these certification programs are very difficult. They require a lot of daily, weekly, monthly, and annual, biannual, quarterly responsibilities, depending on the operation. A lot of things we have to keep track of. And if we have somebody in a quality assurance department that really doesn't know how to do it and does not know how to write these documents and is stuck on the easier parts of it, like how to format policy and procedure, it's going to be very difficult to see all of it working together. But along with that, if I have a good person, I have to think through with quality assurance the political nature of giving someone that authority in my business. If we're a small business and it's the CEO and a few key VPs are the power structure of a business, and we want that, bringing a quality assurance person in is going to potentially create power dynamics. There is almost unavoidable to a quality assurance department are power dynamics. And if I want to run lean and I don't want to have somebody with the authority to go around causing trouble, telling people what to do, making people feel bad, getting into conflict, that quality assurance department may not be the best thing to do. And if that's the case, so be it in an ISO 9001 program. We're not tied to it. But where we can put a QA department in place, I think that is the path of least resistance. Where we have pre-existing SOPs, where we have departments that are already in place, we certainly need to get buy-in from those departments and make sure that those standard operating procedures and any associated forms, any associated processes for like non-conformance are not going to be upended if there's going to be the addition of a new person. Deborah asks if this webinar is being recorded. Deborah, I apologize. I should have mentioned that absolutely this is going to be recorded and sent out to everyone after the fact. So if you wanted to see it from the beginning, no worries at all. Or if you wanted to share it with someone who didn't register for this, this is all available. So no worries. And we want to make sure that with all our webinars, they actually go up on our website, so you can always see them. With this last situation here, one of the things I wanted to mention is that with a quality control department, we also like that a lot. I love quality control departments. Generally, we don't see both. I have seen it. And frankly, where I saw it, there was apparently a dispute within the organization, and that was somewhat of a punishment that was put on a QA manager. Hey, we don't like the way you're doing this. We don't think you're doing a great job. We're going to make a QC manager too. And now the two of you are going to have to figure out how to work together as a check on each other. In that situation, there was conflict involved. I didn't love that. I don't love that. I don't want to see people being punished, and I don't want to see a department for quality being treated as a stick to beat someone up with. However, if you could do a quality assurance department and focus them on how the business runs, and you also were able to have a quality control department aligned with operations, that would be a pretty powerful arrangement. It would need a very careful pair of hands or set of hands on the steering wheel to make sure the organization doesn't get mired in conflict between those departments, or if there's a conflict of interest. But the ability to put a quality department in place, or a series of quality departments, really does fit the ethos of 9001. And as we think through those later sections, section 8 of the ISO 9001 code, which is our operations, part of section 7 when it comes to traceability, which is like partially calibration, measurements, things like that. Those very specific technical functions within an organization, having multiple departments with their eyes on those parts of our operation really do help us feel confident that every time we turn the lights on, every time we start operations, that there's really good assurances in there, that there are people who are well trained and know the difference between right and wrong in the operation, and that those people are walking around with appropriately timed checks, with appropriately timed analysis, and that information, once it's collected, is being put in a usable trend, looked at by people in authority, and that we're able to quickly act in concert with our expectations, with that plan, do, and act. Sorry, plan, correct, do, act. What I'm sorry. With all of that we're doing it correctly. So let's talk about making the right choice here. Let's talk about how we make sure that our quality arrangement, that our quality management system is designed properly. That's going to be taking a step back and thinking through who is available in the area that our business operates in. If we're in a major metropolitan area with access to highly trained people, that might influence our plan to put or to maintain one of these higher level departments, like a quality assurance department. If we have good operators, but generally speaking, the talent that we have access to are people who may not have advanced educations, that should not be a problem. That's just something where we may want to say, like, let's focus on a quality control setup and make sure that those folks are working closely with operations. And that way we can focus on making sure our product is made as best as possible. And we'll work with those people to put together the policies and procedures at a higher level. That would be fine. Who we think we can hire, how much we think we can pay, who the existing personalities are in our business are going to have as much to do with the limitations there as an ideological position of, like, I have to have a quality assurance department, or I have to have QC, or a QA manager, or whatever. A quality manager has to be defined in a certain way. That's something that can be a result of the forces at play, not something we demand and then try to just make it work. As I mentioned, if we can have a quality assurance and quality control department working together, we can focus on how the business runs and how products are made simultaneously. And that would theoretically be an incredible strengthening point to our business. It would also allow for different perspectives. Those line check folks, the folks that are there on the front line, they really have a vantage point on how operators are functioning that someone who may do internal audits and not spend a lot of time in operations, they may not be aware of the personalities that go on in operations or the day-to-day functions of how services are provided, how people are spoken to, how customers are talked to, how we follow up on communication externally to the business. A quality assurance department may not have as much insight as a quality control department. Conversely, the organization or the part of the organization that performs semi-annual or annual checks, management review, quality assurance, internal audits, may do root cause analysis follow-ups and corrective action follow-ups. Those folks may see something over a larger period of time that provides insight that is missed on day-to-day actions. Folks who are focused on how do we interact ongoing may not notice some bigger picture issues that a quality assurance type function might pick up. So if we have the ability to do both, fantastic. If we are confident, like listening to this and thinking, oh, I know exactly what my business really needs to focus on, remembering to do the main functions for the other part of quality would be something to focus on. Lucia mentions high management is key for quality success. I would like to tell you, Lucia, you are 100% correct. You beat me to the punch, but absolutely in an arrangement like that, and you can see on the last bullet point here, is that leadership has to be the ultimate arbiter of these things. So thank you for mentioning that, and your timing is perfect here. When we're thinking about quality, I've mentioned the sort of power dynamic here. Strong leadership is absolutely crucial. And I know we have mentioned this in a previous webinar when we talk about quality. For me, the political inner workings, and again, I want to make sure I know that it's election season. We're not talking about people's political views outside of the business. Forget that. We're talking about the power that is held at individual roles within an organization and how we administer that power as part of dealing with policies and procedures, right? Pure, the practical nature of our business runs and how power is dealt with from an authority standpoint within the business alone is our politics. And as we mentioned, I associate that much more frequently with quality assurance than quality control. However, the chance exists for someone to have accountability, a lack of accountability, and a desire to exert themselves on everyone else and be the power broker. That happens a lot. The only way to make sure that a properly functioning quality entity, whether we have a department of any kind, is to make sure that leadership is providing support. So we need to make sure that we're providing support for that department. We have to hold them accountable. We also have to give them the space to function in a independent way. And where leadership works with quality, whether it's quality control, quality assurance, whether we have a laboratory in the operation or not, whether there's just a service being provided, leadership to be able to liaison with quality, if it's multiple departments or just quality and operations, is going to be crucial. So again, Lucia, thank you for bringing that up. That high management, top management is in fact absolutely essential for proper functioning. We'll kind of start to wrap this thing up. We're getting close to the top of the hour. I mean, for my bullet points, which is a summation here, quality control means we've made things correctly or that we're providing a service correctly. People are following the proper ways to do things every time they do it. And if there's errors or deviations, we can recognize those and pull them off of the service or the line if we're producing something, and correct them, and either release them back into operations or get rid of it. And that we have a mechanism to correct those things and prevent them from happening in the future. The great quality assurance work to have a good quality function at the assurance level is to make sure our business functions correctly. So if we have a corrective action policy and procedure that is properly documented, that where we are creating specific tasks and responsibilities, that we have training materials and plan trainings, and that we have people following up on those things, that we perform internal audits, that top management has regularly scheduled meetings that are accurate to what's happening, and that quality, when asked upon, is able to present true, up-to-date, accurate, timely information to help decision-making at those highest levels. Those things can, like I say, the mix of how we accomplish that in our presentation, in our position, in our operations, those things can be sort of flexible, but making sure we're doing them and making sure that we're paying attention to maintaining those things is absolutely crucial. So here, let's sum it up. As we've said from the beginning, for those who came in late, you are not required to designate quality personnel dedicated. We do not have to have a defined quality assurance department or quality control department. There does not have to be a defined quality department at all. So you have near total flexibility. As we talked about in the ISO 9001 piece, we have to have an organizational structure. We have to have an org chart. We have to have job descriptions. People have to know what their roles and responsibilities are. And if we're going to be certified to a quality code like 9001, we have to make sure we've read the book and we're actually doing all of those things in operation. So with that, we do, and frankly, in a 9001 program, one of the main functions is focusing on communication with key decision makers, with key clients, doing regulatory assessments. What are the rules in our industry? If we find we have to have a dedicated quality manager because it's required by the industry we're in, or by a key customer, they're expecting us to have it, now we know we need to have that. Short of it, if we're just a business that gets to call our own shot and we want to have a quality management system, the most important piece for us is to think through, how are we going to be the highest quality company that we can be? How do we plan ahead properly? How do we have oversight of operations? How do we perform reviews and audits after we're done with operations? And how do we make sure we're controlling errors as they come up? We have flexibility in how we want to do it. I recommend that we define the critical parts of the operation itself, critical production requirements, critical service provider, critical service requirements, and that we have some kinds of checkoffs that would again be more assigned with a quality control function. And I think that every business should have key performance indicators that tell us if our business is functioning properly. That would be more associated with a quality assurance type action. We think that you should have that in your business if you do not already. That is something that is really important. Where you can hire people, being very careful in how you hire is very, very important. To come back to Lucia's point, strong top management leadership. Super, super important. We have to have accountability. We have to have support for quality. We would ideally like to see them independent, but making sure that management communicates throughout the organization that quality is essential to this business, where we have a structure in place, that it is followed, that people are bought into that, and that we are ultimately keeping the quality function its own independent aspect of our operations where we can, is absolutely crucial. So that takes us to about 5 minutes to the hour. I would love to leave the last few minutes for any questions, anything that I can clarify with folks, especially in an ISO 9001 type discussion. It covers all of industry, so it's difficult to get into technical specifics. But if anyone has any specific questions, please shoot into the chat now. we're back to the information for Kellerman Consulting. I do want to make sure folks know, if you have questions, you are welcome to reach out. We don't charge for answering people's quality questions. If we can be of help, we would provide a proposal for service. Otherwise, if anything comes up, if you've listened to this and would like some clarification, feel free to ask now. Feel free to reach out to us. Download that brochure if you like. It explains who we are. I'm not seeing any immediate questions typed in. I'm going to give it about another 30 seconds to a minute. At that point, we're going to let you folks back to the rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening. For the folks that commented in the chat piece, thank you so much. It really does add a tremendous amount to these webinars, and I really appreciate it. It looks like we're just getting thank yous. So folks, please enjoy the rest of your day and week, and hope I get to hear from some of you. All right, take care.